Is it going? Okay. Hare Krishna, everybody. And we're continuing on. Turn on both those lights there. No. Yeah, you can turn on the fan. No. Turn on the other fan. The other one. Turn it up to. Okay, now there are lights beside it. Press it. This is another PhD here. She is. Okay. Namo Vishnubraya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Shachade Shatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. No, it's okay. It's just okay. We're going to read Sri Jagannath, Lord of the Universe. Is that it? Yeah. Okay. So here we are. Almost halfway through. Oh, a little loud over there. Sri Jagannath, Lord of the Universe. The idea of deity worship was never far from Swamiji's mind, even before the discovery of Madan Mohan. As Brahmananda remembers it, quote, before I forget, deities appear in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It says that there are deities all over the world. And either or teachings of Lord Chaitanya, they're yet to be found or to be worshipped, which would mean that, they're not physically there, but they are going to be there. I'll give one example that at Bhaktivedanta Manor, we had, a long time ago, we had the small deities were marble. This was like before even you were around. Small deities were marble, which Prabhupada said that the devotees shouldn't worship marble deities smaller than 2 feet. Which is unfortunately a problem. The reason is that they're very fragile when they're so small. I mean, stone is already fragile, but the smaller it gets, the more easily something, even just a knock. Anyway, I'm not going to go into the story, but Radharani was marble too. Huh?
She was the same.
No. I got another one. Anyhow, Krishna was certainly black marble, and Srimati Radharani I can't remember. And he got broken once, and we repaired it. And that same year, he got broken again. Inconceivable. So the person who repairs, in the Museum of London, they have a specialist because they find, so many artifacts that are not whole. So they put them together so that you can't even see a hairline crack in them. And so this lady came out. She was a lady, and at the second time she said, it's just like too fragile, because every time they fix it, then they have to put a pin. You can't just glue it together. You have to drill a pin in, and so she said, you can't repair. So that meant we needed new deities. So while we were sort of thinking like this, I was the GBC, and I'm down in Soho Street, and I get a message from, at that time still Bajahari was the in charge of Soho Street, and he asked me to come down. So I came down, and he's got this deity on the counter, and brass deity of Krishna, painted completely black, and I asked, what's this? And said that a construction worker came in. They were digging up the foundation of a house in downtown London, and they dug up this deity of Krishna, and of course they knew we were the Hare Krishnas, so they brought him, worker brought him and brought him in. So I got a new deity of Srimati Radharani. It may be that he was a different size or something like that. And the old deities we put in a nice box, and then we put them in the Ganga. It's said that when you put the deities in the Ganga, then Ganga Devi takes them up to Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma fixes them. And he keeps them there. He has all the broken deities. So that's how we got. It took a long time to clean him up because he was painted and so on. So if you go see him, he's there, very beautiful, and just emerged from, the rock of London, just like out of Chaitanya Charitamrita. So deities appear, yes? Whatever. I don't know. Now, quoting Brahmananda, on the other side of the street, across from 2nd Avenue Temple, within a 2-block area, there were 2 funeral homes and 2 tombstone showrooms. In fact, directly across the way were Weisner Brothers and Papper Memorials. It was as if Krishna wanted to remind the devotees at the temple that our bodies are temporary and our stay in this world is fleeting. On display through the glass window of these morbid enterprises were massive granite tombstones and 1-foot-thick gravestones with carved flower designs polished to a shine. Of course, I had no reason to look at these places with any interest, and I basically pretended they didn't exist. Towards the end of 1966, before the entire Madan Mohan episode, I was sitting with Swamiji in his room, and he gave me an assignment. He wanted a statue, murti, made from stone. He made a drawing of this flat-headed, stubby image with funny arms, which he said was the shape of Lord Jagannath, the primary manifestation of Krishna in Puri as worshipped by Lord Chaitanya, and it was the Lord of the universe. And he wanted me to go across the street and ask the tombstone seller to carve this shape out of granite. From Swamiji's point of view, this was a perfectly reasonable request. But I was shocked by it. How could a tombstone seller make this shape he had never seen before, and more, why should he do it? How could I explain why I wanted this thing? To me it seemed like an untenable idea. At the time I didn't know that deities are routinely hand-carved from marble slabs in India and then decorated and worshipped. I don't think I've ever seen a photo of a deity at that point in time, only artwork, paintings of Krishna. From Swamiji's books I knew there were deities, but I didn't know where they came from. ISKCON had not started deity worship yet anywhere. Most importantly, I guess I lacked faith in Swamiji and what he was doing. My connection with him at that point was more about what I could get from him rather than what I could give to him. I had not really surrendered, and so back then, whatever service I rendered, I had to be comfortable with. And asking a tombstone maker to make a stone form that we could worship made me very uncomfortable. Swamiji would frequently ask us to do things like this, which from our limited, this is in brackets, which from our limited point of view seemed impractical. For example, he once asked us to go to Mayor John Lindsay and ask for recognition of our 100% success rate for making young people drug-free. On another occasion, he asked us to go to the mayor and ask him to give us a parcel of land in the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens to build a temple, and for the office at the UNESCO building for holding kirtan and prasadam programs for all the UN delegates. Swamiji had vision, we did not, but I didn't know this at the time. End of brackets. So yes, this is sort of a concept that is really fading away in ISKCON and Krishna consciousness. I know that by the time I joined, by the time Srila Prabhupada, I was practicing Krishna consciousness with Srila Prabhupada in the world. I'd heard enough of these stories to know that just expect it. At any time you could be asked to do something impossible, and that was part of Krishna consciousness. One thing is that Srila Prabhupada, he was never shy to just make the most outrageous request or bold, you could say bold request on Krishna's behalf. Even if it seemed like already you knew this was never going to happen, but Srila Prabhupada asked. He never just thought, no, you could better ask first. So for instance, in Chicago, when Prabhupada was there in '76, give me my handkerchief over there, it's right in the corner. And Srila Prabhupada was in Chicago, and we went for a walk. And at that time, the temple was a YMCA. It was the YMCA wasn't there anymore, but it was an abandoned YMCA. And I mentioned before there was upstairs, which were living quarters. That was all for the grihastas and the brahmacharinis. And downstairs we had there were the offices, and then we had the Brahmachari ashram was in the swimming pool. There was a swimming pool, which was heated on the floor, heated swimming pool. So inside the swimming pool was storage area, and it was actually a good sized swimming pool. And we were on the outside. And we lived on the outside of the swimming pool, on the ground, and there was underfloor heating, so it was never cold. Although Chicago got very cold, it's like Montreal. Even worse with that Lake Michigan. It's right on the shore of Lake Michigan. And so anyway, it was a big building, huge temple room, enough for, I don't know, 500 people. And Srila Prabhupada was on a morning walk, and he saw what was a college, and which was not in use at that current time. So you can imagine it's cars. It was like a whole city block, the size of a city block. So the mayor came to see Prabhupada, and out of the blue, Prabhupada said, I was taking a walk, and I walked past this, what was it? It was, yes, college. I walked past this college, and the mayor said, yes, that's the township's property, and we're planning to renovate it and do such and such with it. So Prabhupada said, well, anyway, why don't you give it to us? Huge, huge, big building. Why don't you give it to us, and we will do an experiment. You will give us your criminals, and we will feed them prasadam and get them to chant Hare Krishna, and we will convert them, we will purify them, and there won't be any more criminals. So here, all of a sudden, Prabhupada's, what if the mayor said yes? And here we are, obviously we're supposed to be living with criminals, and there's like maybe 40 devotees in the temple, but this is like a building for thousands of students. Well, what do we do with this huge big building? How do we maintain it? And we got living with criminals on top of that. And then Prabhupada doesn't even want to buy it. He just wants to ask for it, just give it. And the mayor, he was like floored. He didn't know what to say, but he's very clever. He said, well, I can't make decisions like that. I have to go see the city council and talk with them, which obviously they were. But Prabhupada asked. And you knew that. So every year when Prabhupada said, this year book distribution must double. I mean, we're really young. We were going out full time, 6 days a week, just sometimes 7. And, we're out from 9 in the morning till 7 in the evening. And then on the weekends or Saturdays, we just stay out till 1 o'clock in the morning. And then Prabhupada said, no, you have to double. How are we going to do that? How are we going to double it? So I remember one point when we were in a when we moved out in Montreal out of the bowling alley, and we're looking for a place. They wanted us to move out because there's only one problem: the chants. Pine's Pizza downstairs, Pine's Tavern next door. They were going nuts, all the customers, because of the chants. Because when the chants went off, it's not like, you're not willing to eat spicy things. But, the chants were so strong. It was like, from the kitchen you heard this shout, open the windows! And you had to open the windows, and if you didn't have like a strong resistance to chili, smoke and so on, devotees would, go downstairs and go outside until it went downstairs into these other places, and so they said, look, you got to leave. You can't stay here. We can't live with this. So we had to move, and we moved to a temporary place that was just opposite a metro stop. So when Prabhupada said how to double it, I said, we're going to go out earlier. So 6 o'clock in the morning we'd go out and we get the first rush of people who came. I think the metro, at that time the metro stopped. Now of course it goes 24 hours a day, but then it stopped and it started again somewhere at around 5 o'clock. So the first wave of workers came at 6 o'clock. So we just ran in and we just caught them, and we did it from 6 to deity greeting. And when they tried to, it was good because, you know, you started off the day with, you go out in the morning and you already have something in your pocket. But it wasn't doubling it, that's for sure. But that was there, our Prabhupada said it, therefore we have to be able to do it. And it came out. Internationally, it worked out to being double. It doesn't mean that every temple doubled it, but some new temples came into existence, and some temples increased a lot, and some people doubled it. So all of these, you know, in Chicago also, we were at the airport, and we were highly disliked by the airport management, by the police there, and so on. And Chicago's a very rough place. So we were just adding to the aggravation of the people who were coming out. So we had regular fist fights, and you know, people were complaining that we were bothering them and stopping them. You can't imagine the things that are there. So anyway, the main thing is that the airport administration so much dislikes us. And Prabhupada comes in, and I think this was also in '76. So he tells, I wasn't there then, I didn't come till '77 there. So he tells Tripurari, Swami at that time, he says, go to the airport manager. Now it was called O'Hare Airport, and it was written O-H-A-R-E. There was an Irish person who was the first person there in that area to fly an airplane. He was called O'Hare. So the airport was called O'Hare Airport. So Prabhupada tells us to go to the manager and ask him to rename the airport O Hare Krishna Airport. I mean, you know, but you didn't tell Prabhupada, but Prabhupada, that's not possible. Prabhupada didn't want to hear things like that. You just went. So he went, made an appointment, took a piece of cake, not a piece of cake, took a cake in to the manager, and wants to know, what do you want? Says, well, my spiritual master sent me and asked me to, you had to say that, you couldn't say it personally. Says, my spiritual master asked me for a request. He says, well, what's that? He's asking if you could rename the airport. Rename the airport. And then was the punchline, well, what's the new name? He says, well, you keep the O'Hare there, but you call it O Hare Krishna Airport. I mean, I wasn't there at the time, but, you know, the guy, he was just like, he couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe it. Were we really that, we never picked up on the fact that we weren't liked over there. Renamed the airport. But Prabhupada said it. And we did it. And, you know, whether they did or they didn't, it didn't matter. Prabhupada wanted us to ask, and wanted us to, you know, not pass up any possible opportunity that would be there for Krishna. And then we had faith. We had faith that Well, at least we had faith to ask whether it was going to happen or not. So many of these miraculous things. But and there were so many such instances around the world where Srila Prabhupada made these requests. Yes. Go to the mayor and ask him for a piece of land. By the time, I remember when I was in the UK, in the GBC, and when the Manna campaign was going on, which meant that they wanted us to move. So aside from fighting it, we were also looking for alternative places. So I asked our communications department, who was in touch with dignitaries and so on, to go to the Mayor of London, and that they should give us a piece of, they should give us some land in Regent Park for building a temple. Now, it wasn't an unreasonable thing, because they had given the Muslims, what country was that? Turkey. Somebody, when the British were in the Middle East, they made an agreement with one of the Turkish countries, not Turkish, one of the Muslim countries, that they could build a mosque in Regent's Square, Park. So in Regent's Park, there's this mosque. It's called the Regent's Square Mosque. So why shouldn't the Hindus go? Especially after what the British did to India. So why shouldn't, but the devotees didn't have faith, that wasn't willing to do it. That asking for a piece of Regent's Park, why not? It's a perfectly good argument. And Srila Prabhupada had also mentioned that he wanted a temple over there. Hare Priya, you're going under. Anyway, after due consideration, I obediently went across the street and carried out the assignment. I was relieved that they didn't give much attention to the strange shape in the drawing, and politely explained that they only sell the tombstones and do not manufacture them, and the stone cutters use machines to cut the quarried stone into fixed shapes and sizes, and do not do custom hand-carved shapes, especially something as unconventional as this. So, Lord Jagannath did not appear to Swamiji's movement at this time. That would happen a short time later in San Francisco, where we were provided not only the deities by Malati's grace, but a disciple, Shyamasundar, who could carve and paint large deities out of wood, exactly like the Lord of the Universe at Puri. End quote. Interestingly, Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur, Swamiji's spiritual master, had originally envisioned Jagannath deities for his mission in the West. Jagannath is known as a particularly merciful manifestation of the Lord, coming out from his inner chambers for all to see him during the Rath Yatra festival in Puri. In this way, he embodied the compassionate mood of the Lord of the Universe, freely bestowing his love upon all. Consequently, in February 1970, Swamiji wrote to Hanuman Prasad Podar, the famous founder of the Gita Press, with whom he had a friendly relationship. The deities worshipped in ISKCON temples are Jagannath Swami with Balaram and Subhadra, and Radha Krishna. When we first start a temple, we start with Jagannath Swami. My Guru Maharaj recommended temples of Jagannath in these countries. So I was inspired to establish, first of all, Jagannath Swami, because he is kind even to the Milechas. Then, when there is an opportunity, I establish Radha Krishna Murti. That was interesting. I had not known that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted to install Lord Jagannath. In Brahmananda's words, quote, When Shyamasundar made the Jagannath deities in San Francisco, he actually made a set for New York too. And Swamiji brought them. He personally brought them with him on the plane. I remember we picked up Swamiji at the airport, and then we went to get his luggage. He had 1 or 2 suitcases, and we got those, but then he said, no, there's more. And then these big wooden crates came down the chute, and Swamiji said, those. We had no idea what was in them. We didn't even ask. They were large-sized Jagannath deities. We brought them back to the temple, to Swamiji's quarters. We sat with him for a while, and then he said we could open the crates in the other room. According to his instruction, we opened the crates and took out the deities. We didn't even know what they were. And Haigreev was making jokes. These look like a Native American totem pole. Wonder what Jagannath thought of that. We were trying to figure out which one went on top, which one on the bottom, which one of the 3 is in the middle, and so on. And then Swamiji came in and saw us joking. He turned around and said, this is God. We all just fell straight on the floor and offered obeisances to the deities. This is how Swamiji taught us deity worship. All he had to say was, this is God, end quote. As Brahmananda says, the Jagannath deities had come from San Francisco, where Swamiji's movement was now thriving. Although the California history of ISKCON does not directly involve New York Temple president, it was a critical juncture in the movement's history, with pivotal devotees joining and helping Swamiji expand his interests. Its impact on the New York devotees is interesting, and so a brief summary is in order. In January 1967, at the behest of Mukunda Das, one of Swamiji's first American disciples who had traveled from New York to the West Coast and opened the temple, the Swami took his first journey by plane. He had initially come from India by boat. The New York devotees, including Brahmananda, were devastated. They never thought of ISKCON as anything beyond their tiny storefront. So we thought ISKCON was going to be one temple and that's it. Swamiji, however, knew better, as is indicated by the International Society, part of the ISKCON acronym, because there was like a formula, and that is that you got a storefront in the downtown section of whatever city you were in. So more or less that's what ISKCON was about, storefronts. And that's what a temple is, a storefront. You just open a storefront. But Prabhupada had other ideas. He knew his movement would branch out internationally, for it was predicted that Lord Chaitanya's mission would expand worldwide. In fact, devotees such as Mukunda, along with Guru Das, Malati Jamuna, and many others, were now taking Swamiji's movements to new heights, beginning in San Francisco, but moving forward to England and around the world. Meanwhile, towards the beginning of this expansion, Swamiji was in San Francisco, making sure that the movement was getting off to an authorized start. That is to say, he was helping his fledgling and hippie-like disciples establish ISKCON in a legitimate way, based on the teachings of his predecessors, while instituting daily practices that enabled them to truly advance in Krishna consciousness. Though they were inclined to the youth culture of the day, with Swamiji's guidance, they quickly became authentic Gaudiya Vaishnavas and were able to spread his mission wherever they went. Subheading: Devotees in New York. While on the West Coast, Swamiji frequently corresponded with the devotees in New York, which gave them enthusiasm and the ability to function on his behalf. In fact, a mere 3 days after he arrived in San Francisco, he wrote a letter for his New York disciples. My dear Brahmananda, Hayagriva, Kirtananda, Satsvarup, Gargamuni, Achutananda, Jadurani, please accept my greetings and blessings of Guru Gauranga Giridhari Gandharvika. Giridhari Gandharvika, or the deities here at Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's Samadhi. Those are deities he established personally, and it has the 4 Vaishnavacharyas, Sampradaya Acharyas around, and he would go in to the deity room, and he would consult with the deities on his plans and so on for preaching, and he would talk to the deities and get guidance. You have already got the news of our safe arrival, and now Prabhupada is referring to this Giridhari Gandharvika. Interesting. You have already got news of our safe arrival and good reception by the devotees here. Mr. Allen Ginsberg and about 50 or 60 others received us on the airport, and when we arrived in my apartment, there were some press reporters also who took note of my mission. So there's 50, 60 devotees, very few of those were living in the temple. But when Prabhupada went to there was a television interview, and they asked him, this same time, and they asked him, Swamiji, how many students do you have worldwide? And the Prabhupada said, about 10,000. He was not afraid to, present ISKCON in a very expansive light. 2 or 3 papers like the Examiner and the Chronicle have published a report. One of the reports is sent herewith. Please find. I wish that 1,000 copies of this report may be printed at once, and 100 copies of the same may be sent here as soon as possible. I understand that you are feeling my absence. Krishna will give you strength. Physical presence is immaterial. Presence of the transcendental sound received from the spiritual master should be the guidance of life. That will make our spiritual life successful. If you feel very strongly about my absence, you may place my pictures on my sitting places, and this will be a source of inspiration for you. We didn't know these things. It was Prabhupada, everything. I am very much anxious to hear about the final decision of the house. I wish to open the house by the 1st of March 1967, and arrangement may be done dexterously in this connection. I have not yet received the tapes for dictaphone, and I have sent you tapes yesterday. Please offer my blessings to Shriman Neil. Shriman Roy Ram is cooking well and distributing prasadam to the devotees, numbering some 70. It is very encouraging. I think this center will be very nice branch without delay. Everything is perspective. Hope you are all well and awaiting your reply. Yours affectionately, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Yes, and of course, I think you all know or have heard about that other impossible thing that Prabhupada asked, and that was sort of like, and that was when Srila Prabhupada asked devotees to lay out, print, paint for 17 volumes of Chaitanya Charitamrita in 2 months. It's impossible. But at that point, Prabhupada really drew the line, and he told him, if you can't do it, then you're useless. So there was no, and mostly in other things there were no particular consequences, but here Prabhupada really made it very, very clear. He put his foot down and says, I want them in 2 months. And I mean, for instance, we just did now a volume of Vilap Kusumanjali, and you know, of course, writing and then editing and production. It was like 5-6 months, and that's pretty good. That way, you know, we bring out 2 books a year. So, but here Prabhupada is saying he wrote 17 books in 2 months. So they did it. They did it. No one ever heard of anything like that before. And the printer, who was the second biggest printer in America, he said, okay, I'll dedicate my printing presses just for that, over that period of time. In other words, didn't print anything else. So it was, Prabhupada was really highly respected as an author by the printing press world, from Japan to America to everywhere else. Okay, I'm speaking a lot this time. Okay. This letter was important and the first of many to follow. From this brief expression of love, the devotees could understand that Swamiji was always with them through transcendental sound vibration. He had always taught them the same truth, but now in separation it became even more poignant, more pronounced. They were compelled to associate with him through sound, for he was 3,000 miles away. There was no alternative. Now, more than ever before, in their brief Krishna-conscious sojourn, their lives depended on the holy name. So they chanted just as he had shown them, and they continued regular services just as they had when he was there. At first they played tapes of his kirtans and talks, listening intently. But then they realized that they should follow his example, and so gradually under his guidance they would lead kirtan and give brief talks of their own, based squarely on everything that they have heard from him. This was the Parampara system. The ancient Gaudiya Vaishnava disciplic succession was now moving forward on the Lower East Side. Brahmananda was amongst the first to lead the chanting and give the classes. Everything was in place and progressing as it should, except for one thing: the proposed acquisition of a new temple. A plan was set into motion before Swamiji left for the West Coast. That plan was faltering in his absence. He refers to this in his letter as the house, and as he writes, he was anxious that the devotees acquire this property before March of that same year. The devotees had approximately 10,000 in savings, and their monthly bills were being paid by Brahmananda and Sat Swarup, who maintained outside jobs. It was these 2 devotees, in fact, who were in charge of the New York temple and who had to interact with an experienced businessman to secure the new property. They gave him 1,000 to show good faith, but it gradually became evident that he had less than noble motive, a scenario that Swamiji had already anticipated before he left. He had warned his disciples to be careful with this particular individual, saying that he was not really a well-wisher of ISKCON. In the end, he exploited the devotees, as Swamiji said he would. The property was never acquired. Still, Swamiji continued on in San Francisco without missing a beat. And when he returned to New York in April 1967, he brought Lord Jagannath with him, as mentioned above. In other words, the devotees of New York ISKCON not only had an uninstalled Madan Mohan watching over them, but they eventually had a Puri-fashioned Lord of the Universe as well. Okay, and we will continue on page 72 on opportunity for intimate service. There were instances when Srila Prabhupada, like shot for the moon, and disciples were actually in disagreement. For instance, you'll know that George Harrison printed first copies of Krishna book. The letter is there. So there were few devotees who were cultivating George, not cultivating, he was a devotee, who were friends with him. And so Prabhupada asked him to ask George to come. And so that devotee came, and that devotee, George and Prabhupada, were sitting in Prabhupada's room, and Prabhupada told George, he said, I finished this book, but I don't have money to print it. I said, can you give money? So up until now, the whole strategy between the friends was never ask George for any money. If he comes forward himself. So, of course, George said yes. Wasn't $17,000, wasn't really much wealth for a beetle, you know. So, but still, anyway, he said yes, sure, and Prabhupada asked him to write a letter. So, can't imagine how many books got sold. Just you didn't have to just show the letter and even say this is George's book, he wrote it. And people would just buy set, because there's 3 of them. And but the devotee, when it was over and came out, and to some other devotees said, boy, Prabhupada really blew it this time, saying that Prabhupada discouraged George or so on, which wasn't a fact. So that was also there, that sometimes devotees just either couldn't agree with the way Prabhupada went about things, or they just like Prabhupada, they couldn't carry out his order, or they wouldn't do it. In 1977, there was this very major court case in New York, which was all about the authenticity of ISKCON, Krishna consciousness movement. And the person who was leading that case was, at that time, the temple president of New York Temple. So when he came to Mayapur, Prabhupada gave him, before the court case, he'd come to Mayapur, and Prabhupada gave him personal instruction and so on as to what he should do. One of the things he said was, he says, you take all my books and you say, Your Honor, this is our evidence. And Prabhupada says, evidence means that you read it from beginning to end. You say, this is our evidence that ISKCON is bona fide, which meant now we're going to read all of Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita and Act of Devotion and Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada was serious. He was, saying you should just read all of those books. The other thing Prabhupada said, which I can't repeat here, it's not something I can say in front of ladies, but Prabhupada said that when you're in court, he said, you stand up and you tell them and what he wanted them to call this civilization, Western civilization. And it was, not the type of thing that you say in a court of law. But the devotee wouldn't do it. He just couldn't feel like, I can't say this. And I can say what Prabhupada. This was, Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada says, you tell them, you stand up and you tell them that what they think is a civilization. For us, as far as we're concerned, you're just a vagina-licking civilization. That's what you are. This is like in Supreme Court of New York. This is what Prabhupada wants him to say. Prabhupada, was very outspoken, and he wasn't at all afraid of shocking people. But then there's a cost of not doing what Prabhupada says. I mentioned before, I was in the same situation, and then we're leaving, which was that when Prabhupada came to Montreal in '75, I was telling him about this university program that I did, and at the end, the university professor said that I didn't really know very much about the Bhagavad Gita. I was just explaining it from one point of view. And Prabhupada just looked at me and he says, "Take him to court." I said, "What?" He said, "Take him to court." He says, "We will make him prove that he knows more about Bhagavad Gita than you do." He says, "So you prove that you know more, and you do it in a court of law." I was like, I was just telling Prabhupada about a preaching program. All of a sudden, I'm in the court. And then I tell my GBC, I said, Prabhupada said I should go to Krishna. And he said, no, it's not necessary. I would have done it, but he said, no. He was the same person who told me, Prabhupada said, come to India. Same person who told me not to go to India. So, yeah, there were these things. Prabhupada would just, he didn't want to fool around. He said, just go to court. He just looked strict. Let's go to court. I couldn't figure out what, maybe Prabhupada wasn't following what I was saying. Go to court over what? Over a comment? Yeah. So Prabhupada was very, very bold, and he wanted to try everything for Krishna, and that's what we should do. We should continue on like that, trying anything for Krishna, being bold in Krishna's service, not being politically correct, not coattailing to what other people's expectations are, not caring what people think. Ultimately, if we know this is what Prabhupada thinks, this is what Krishna wants, then we do that. And of course there were other things. Prabhupada said, it's there, but on a morning walk, he's walking in Mumbai, he said, yes, when we take over the world, we'll tell somebody, chant Hare Krishna. And if they don't want to chant, bang, bang. Giriraj Maharaj was there. The Prabhupada saw him. He said, yes, our Giriraj is a little of a pacifist. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Bang, bang.